And welcome back to another episode of the Forever Aflame podcast. I'm Carman Lastoria, and today we are pleased to be joined by one of my good friends, and Jeremey Isaacs is on the couch. Jeremey, how are you doing, sir?
I'm excited to be here. Doing great.
It's great to have you. Jeremey pastors a thriving church. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Generations Church down in Georgia. A lot of connections to Lee. You're a member of our board of directors. You are a Forever Aflame. You were an alum.
That's right.
Met your wife here. A lot of great Lee stories. So let's start there, and that's where we typically start with our guests. We start with that Lee journey. So what brought you to Lee, and maybe highlight just a couple of those moments that really stand out as significant to you?
Yeah, so my family moved a lot when I was growing up. My parents had a job, an opportunity to do ministry in our denomination that had like term limits. So we were moving every 4 years. And then most of my high school years were spent here in the Chattanooga area. I went to Ooltewah High School, and we went to North Cleveland Church of God. And so I was in and around campus a lot in those formative teen years. And so because of that, I knew a lot of Lee students, some of the people on campus, and that really just kind of spurred in me, even though I'd always thought about Lee and thought that might be where I ended up in school. It really became something that was very, I desperately wanted to go to Lee. So then we actually moved before my senior year to Georgia. We moved to Atlanta, and I actually begged my parents, can I stay in Chattanooga? I can live with another student that, we know. And they're like, no, we move as a family. So I only lived there about 9 months. We moved there. I just was my senior year of high school, and as soon as I graduated, I came back and did summer honors, and then started at Lee that fall. And I loved being able to be at Lee because it felt like just a natural next step for my life. And then, I've always said, even after I left Lee, like you get out of Lee what you put into Lee. Yeah. And if you're looking for a great education, you can get it. If you're looking for a great social life, you can find it. But whatever you're looking for, you really can find it here. And so there was a lot of different phases of even my Lee journey while I was on campus. But I'm so thankful for my time here because it was not just the information that I learned, it was that formation in that season of time that really shaped who I am today.
I want to talk a little bit about that. You're a highly popular chapel and convocation speaker, and you shared a message, I guess this has been a couple of years ago at a convocation, and you reference a story about your time at Lee. And a conversation you had with your dad. And I know your dad well. Shout out to Bill Isaacs, one of the best men I know. And it was in a moment where you were kind of struggling with the next step in your call into ministry. And I feel like I need to be doing something. And your dad gave you some great advice, and you shared that with the students a couple of years ago. And it always stuck with me because I think it's such a, college is such a transitional, pivotal time in a young person's life. And maybe share that story about how that kind of shaped your journey at Lee to continue to study and kind of do the next right thing to do in the season that God has you.
So I came to Lee, and everybody's got their own story, but as I was coming to Lee, I wouldn't classify myself as like this backslidden sinner. Like I wasn't running from God, but I definitely was running from the call of God that I knew was on my life. And I had decided that even though I felt a call toward ministry, I was not going to do ministry. I wasn't going to pursue that. So I actually came to Lee, and at that time, I don't even know if this is still available. They had a degree pursuit that was called pre-law emphasis. So it was a lot of psychology and sociology and American history and government, poli-sci stuff. And so I came to really prepare myself to be a lawyer with a desire to be a public defender, kind of go into the inner city, help people that couldn't help themselves. So the call was still there, but I was going to do it a different way. And one night I was sitting in the chapel, I was in the con center, I was up in the balcony, almost as far away from the stage as you can get. And I was writing a paper. I don't even think they would let you do that now, but I was working on a paper that was due the next day. And the story that I tell is so vivid in my mind. I don't know who was speaking that night. I don't know what they were speaking on. But as I'm working on a paper, this was back, like in the 1900s, I was pen and paper.
You were pen and paper,
But I'm working on that. And there was a moment where I just looked up, and I looked towards the stage, and I couldn't still hear the person that was speaking on stage, but God started speaking in my heart. And so at the end of that message, there was an altar call. I came down, I knelt to the right side of the stage on the floor near the steps, and I just prayed the most simple prayer you could pray. Lord, I'm in. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Wherever you want to go, I'll go. And I got up from that prayer, and I went back to my apartment, and then the next morning I went to class, and then I went to my job at Papa John's delivering pizzas. They were $6.50 for a one-topping large here in Cleveland. I delivered that. And so I went to Papa John's, and I came home, and that afternoon I called my dad, and I said, Like, what am I supposed to do? What happened? Like, I feel like something should have changed. I committed my life back to God in pursuit of him.
Right.
I said, do I need to go change my major? Do I need to go, like, drop out of school and go do ministry? He said, no. He said, go to class, be the best student you can be.
There you go.
Go to work, show up on time, work hard, don't leave early. He said, when you're in your car, preach sermons to empty cars, listen to worship music, allow God to form you. And he said, when God needs you, he'll know right where to find you.
Yeah.
Just be as faithful as you can right now. And that really became a pursuit of my life in that season, was just to do the next right thing I knew to do. And that was the most God-honoring thing I could do in obedience. And when I began doing that, God began to open doors of opportunity. Right. And he's never failed in that regard. And so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that story. It's really stuck with me, and I've shared it many times in talking with our college and young adult ministry at my church. All right, Lee experience. Yep. Obviously, you met somebody pretty special at Lee. We gotta talk about that. It's a it's a Lee story that you hear, but your ministry, your life partner.
Yep.
Tell us about how you met Corrie.
Yeah, so the great thing about Corrie and I is we met before we got to Lee, but our relationship didn't really develop until we got here, as far as the dating. And so we had met at Church of God youth camp years before. We were separated by some. I was in Chattanooga, she was in Knoxville. I moved to Atlanta, she's still in Knoxville. And I'm sitting in class one day at Lee, and Corrie was a year behind me in school, and I'm sitting in class, and Corrie walks in with another girl that had come with her to like a frontline or preview day. And I mean, I guess I'm easily distracted, because at that point I didn't know what they're teaching on. Now I'm focused on her sitting over there, and so I'm like, oh, there she is. I haven't seen her in a little while, and so we ended up connecting that day. She comes to Lee, and we just stayed and became, again, best friends and hung out. I tell this story. It's probably not a great story for me, but I went on a first date with somebody else, dropped them off, went and picked up Corrie and hung out with her. That's who I wanted to hang out with, and
it all worked out in the end.
It all worked out in the
end.
end. But we just hung out all the time. And I was working in a church here in Cleveland part-time as a youth pastor. Corrie was a youth leader for me. And our pastor called us to a solemn assembly, prayer and fasting for a season. And Corrie and I both felt the desire to fast and pray during that season. Neither one of us had talked about like fasting and praying for a specific, like us to develop a relationship, but just for our future. What would God have for me? What was God looking for her? And her fast ended just before mine did. I was sitting in her apartment one day, and she's putting groceries away in the cabinets, and I'm sitting on her couch looking at her and I felt the Lord, like, I'm blaming it on the Lord, but I want her to put my cans away the rest of my life.
There you go.
And so my fast ended on a Friday. Our first date was a Saturday. I called my mom on Tuesday. I was like, I need you to help me find a ring, because
I knew right away.
I knew right away.
You knew it.
I knew right away. I asked her to marry me in front of my youth group here in Cleveland on a Wednesday night, preaching on 1 Corinthians 13, and we got married like 6 or 7 months later. But Lee really cemented what God had been positioning us for all along.
So you graduate, you walk across that stage, and did you enter ministry right away? What did that picture look like? Obviously, you were already doing some ministry. You felt that call. Yeah. So what did those first couple of years look like in ministry?
So I'm one of those students that left Lee before I graduated initially. I came back through Lee Online to graduate.
Great.
And I'm so thankful for Lee Online. Like, when I left school originally, my commitment to my parents and even to Corrie was like, hey, I'm going to finish.
Yeah.
But then life and ministry and busyness and distraction and all the things, just it started creeping lower and lower down the priority list. But Lee Online provided me an opportunity not just to finish what I started, but to finish where I started.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take classes online and to get into cohorts with students that were in pursuit of the same thing. Some of my best friends now, we reconnected during those online discussion boards. And, and so I walked the line several years after I'd left the physical campus, but I still felt like I was a part of the Lee student body. And so I was able to walk the line. But I did leave school to go and enter right into ministry, full-time ministry in Mobile, Alabama. I was a youth pastor. Corrie and I were there for about 3.5 years with Pastor Durwood Perkins, who's also a member of our board of directors.
Yeah.
And Pastor Durwood was an incredible pastor and mentor in that season. And then we left there in 2007 to go to Atlanta to work at Mount Paran North for Dr. Mark Walker. And we served there under him he and Udella for about 10 years.
So you got to work with some pretty good,
telling you,
couple of pretty good lead pastors right there.
Here's the thing. I say that all credit goes to God, and then my parents, my wife Corrie, and then these incredible pastors that I served under, because they have shaped me into not just the man, but the leader, the pastor, and so many of the things that I enjoy today. One of my favorite passages comes out of Deuteronomy 6. It says that, when you get into the land of promise, you're going to drink from wells you didn't dig and eat from vineyards you didn't plant. And I am so aware that the wells I drink from and the vineyards that I eat from, they are because previous generations, previous pastors and leaders and influences in my life, they dug those wells, they planted those vineyards, and now it's my responsibility, it's your responsibility to dig new wells so that there's something to drink in the future. There's something to eat in the future. And so there's future generations of Lee students and ministry leaders that will experience the blessings of God because of our faithfulness today, because we've experienced it now because of the previous generations. And so I'm thankful for that.
I love that. And that's really what we're trying to build in our alumni relations department.
That's
It's to give back that next generation of flame. So I love that you mentioned that. And I think that's at the heartbeat of so many of us who our lives were transformed by being on this campus, by being in this place. And we want other students to experience that.
That's exactly right.
You can get a great education at a lot of different schools. You can get a Christian education at a lot of great Christian institutions, but Lee provides those transformative moments.
That's exactly right.
So that's what gets us excited.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're youth pastoring.
Yep.
Church is growing.
Yep.
You're in a great spot.
Right.
You feel now maybe time, though. Take us through Generations Church and how that developed.
Yeah, so we were on staff at Mount Paran North there, just outside of Atlanta, North Atlanta. And Dr. Walker, Pastor Mark, is what we call him. I still call him to this day. Shared a dream that was in his heart. We were at a Waffle House in Peachtree City, Georgia.
That's where all dreams come alive.
Man,
at the Waffle House.
Right over, scattered, smothered, and covered, I guess.
Come
but
on.
He said, I got a dream to reach people that maybe we're not reaching in our current location. And he said, I want you and Corrie to take the next maybe 9 to 12 months and build a team and figure out what it would look like for us to either do something on our campus. And, maybe in that season, there was a lot of conversations, a lot of church models that were the traditional and contemporary type services on the same campus.
Switching it up.
So was that what we wanted to do? Or did we want to look at another location and launch a campus? And so really after about 9 or 10 months, it became clear that the best option for us as a church family was to launch another physical location, maybe 20 miles or so away from our campus. We looked at 3 or 4 cities that kind of lit up on the map that we had, a group of people already driving in from to Marietta where we were at. And so he asked Corrie and I to serve as the campus pastors. And so we launched in a high school in 2012. We did portable church for 209 Sundays. I know I can count every one. Right. We would load up, U-Haul box trucks that we had purchased with equipment, roll up to a high school, unload them, have church, load them back up, and park them in a warehouse.
Long days, weren't they?
Long days, but such formative days. There's so much of the blessings of God in our church family right now that were forged in that season of portable church, because you would show up to that high school and you just knew, like, we're going to create an environment where people can experience God no matter what it takes. We're going to do whatever it takes. And so we did that for 209 Sundays. And then in that timeline, we began to we found another building. We rented space in that building. And then Pastor Mark left to come to Lee University as a vice president in the School of Theology and Ministry. I think it was the School of Religion at that point.
Yeah.
And when he did, we separated the 2 campuses. And what was at the time Canton Church was a campus. It separated to become an autonomous church and became Generations Church. And Corrie and I were appointed officially as the lead pastors instead of just the campus pastors.
Let's talk about that name. I love the name, and I know there's significance, obviously, to the name. So talk a little bit about the name of your church.
Yeah, so again, I just referenced a little bit, but Deuteronomy 6, this idea that, and I'm putting a couple of verses together there, but that faith is for you, your children, and your children's children. That comes from a couple of the first few verses in Deuteronomy 6. That faith is not just to be possessed or enjoyed by yourself.
Right.
It's to be, maybe passed on from one generation to the next. The Psalms talk about one generation commends thy works to another. And so there are people in our church that are much like me, that are 3rd, 4th, 5th generations of faith, that somebody before them modeled faith for them. They were authentically in pursuit of Jesus, and they said, hey, we want you to have Jesus for yourself. You can't live off your mom and dad's faith, your grandparents' faith. You got to have a personal relationship with Jesus, but it was modeled for them. And then there's other people that are a part of our church. They're first generation of faith people. That they've experienced something in their life, and they walked into church one day, and they put a stake in the ground, and like Joshua, they said, hey, it's for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I don't care what's happened before, I'm going to change the family narrative. And so we're a church that's made up of a first generation and 5th generation, and we're made up of 18-year-olds and 80-year-olds. And I was telling somebody even yesterday, one of my favorite things about our church is that it is a very regular thing in any of our 3 services currently that you could look on the same row and you might see 2 or 3 generations of a single family worshiping together, or you might see an 18-year-old who showed up to church by himself because mom and dad aren't coming with him, but he's sitting there next to some spiritual grandmas and grandpas who their grandkids aren't in church, but they're worshiping side by side. And I love that. And that's really our heart. It reflects Corrie and I, our stories of faith. Her grandparents were pastors in the Church of God. Her mom's a godly woman who raised her at Park West Church in Knoxville. And just so much of our faith, it was modeled for us by previous generations. And now we're raising children that we want to take and pass on our faith and say, hey, this is what it looks like to follow Jesus. You make that decision for yourself, but here's what it looks like. And we want that for you.
Well, let's talk about your kids, because obviously you've got 4, correct?
That's right.
And one of them is on the lead baseball team.
That's right.
Cooper is here. And so how has that been to be able to kind of share this lead journey with him? Because, you guys both went here and now he's going here junior year, I believe, already.
This is junior year. That's exactly right.
That's got to be cool. So how has it been being a lead parent? You've been able to experience it as a student, as an online student, part of our board of directors, but probably most proud, I'm sure, is the fact that you're a lead parent.
Yeah, I think for me, we always want to give our kids an opportunity to chase what God lays on their heart. We create some guardrails. We try to give them direction and wisdom and counsel, but we want them to take the steps of their faith journey. And so we didn't try to pressure Cooper to come here. We visited other schools. He had other opportunities to play baseball at other schools. But this was a place that when the opportunity was presented to him, Coach Brew offered him the opportunity to come, that he readily accepted that opportunity. And so as a parent, now watching him on the same campus where God did so much in my life, in Corrie's life, to watch what God's doing in his life these last 3 years, that's a special blessing.
Sure.
There's something really powerful about watching your children experience the goodness of God in a familiar place. And so I'm thankful for that. We have 3 other kids. Our second son is a freshman at Liberty University. He plays men's
lacrosse. Yeah, I saw that. And great athlete.
We don't have
men's lacrosse.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, if we had men's lacrosse here at Lee,
you mentioned that to me several years ago.
There was a couple of times I was like, man, if we could just pull this together, we might end up with another one here. But he's thriving there. I'm so thankful for another Christian environment where he's being formed and shaped into
Division
the man of
I
God.
athlete.
Yeah, he's an incredible young man. Then we have two more at home. We have a 16-year-old named Tucker. He's a junior in high school. And then we have a 14-year-old daughter named Kinley, and I'm just so thankful for what God's doing in our kids. Each of them has a personal relationship with God. Each of them pursues extracurriculars and athletics, but they all love to serve in and through the local church. And I think that's what we're most proud of. It's not their accolades on the field or in the classroom, though they all are successful in those arenas. It really is that they are chasing a relationship with God, and God is speaking to them personally, leading and guiding them personally, and so we're just trusting God with their future.
Yeah. Speak to that a little bit, because I know, some people, obviously pastors' kids, they're kind of put under a microscope. You were a pastor's kid. And so just speak to that of how you guys have been able to navigate and embody what it means to work with excellence, work with all your might at building your ministry and doing it unto the Lord, but not sacrificing at the altar of the family and keeping that balance. Because I think for a lot of young ministers and just young entrepreneurs or business leaders or anybody out there, it's hard to navigate that balance. How have you been able to do that, and what was modeled for you that you have expressed, because I think you've done it the right way?
Well, I will say that I believe I benefited from an incredible mom and dad. My mom passed away almost 15 years ago now, but my mom and dad were incredible models for me, that their first ministry was our family. And that's not like just some cliche conference speak, public, like they really did model that for us. We watched them make sacrifices that prioritized our family, maybe to the detriment of professional advancement or other notoriety or other things that they prioritized me and my brother Jason, and we watched that. We were never kind of pitted to be adversarial to the church. They always spoke highly of the local church and of faith, and so even when there were hard times, they talked about those things in an appropriate way within our family, but they didn't do so in a way that downgraded the church or downgraded the people of the church. They did such a life-giving thing, and so my brother and I both have a high value for the local church and faith, personal faith, and so then what Corrie and I have tried to do is to model that same thing, that our first ministry is our family. Now, a few years ago, it was about a year or two ago, I posted something like that on Facebook, and that's a dangerous thing to do anyway. But I posted and I talked about how my family was my first ministry.
Yeah.
And I took a ton of bullets for that my first ministry is God and the church. And while I understood, I think the sentiment of what other people were saying, I will die on that hill.
Yeah.
My
Me
first
too.
ministry
I
is
amen
my
to that.
family,
Yep.
my wife, Corrie, and then my children, and then God's church.
Right.
And I this again, I feel like I'm a one-liner in this regard, but like if I'll take care of my bride, God will take care of his.
Yeah.
It's his church. And so I'm going to love his bride, love the church. He gave his life for it. He's coming back for it.
Yeah.
And so like I'm committed to that. But I believe that God has blessed me and given to me my wife and my children, and at some point in the future, grandchildren, to really model faith for them. And so we've tried to do that. We serve as a family. I missed a really important service in our church a few years ago to go and be at a very monumental moment for one of my kids, and I don't regret it even a little bit.
Right.
Like we've prioritized that to the best of our ability, and we've talked about it and valued that among our church people. And I think that that's something that's really, it comes across. That's our heart, that we love the Lord, we love our family, and we love the church. And those things do not have to be opposed to one another, but there's non-negotiable priorities there.
I love that. That's so good. Great advice too, I think, for young ministers who may be watching this and struggling to, find that balance. I think that's a great word. I know golf's big in your family, and had the opportunity to speak at a very cool event last May that your family has done for years. Your grandfather started it, where you different ministry friends together and you play a big golf tournament. So I got to ask you, out of your family, and there's some good golfers in your family. Who's the best golfer in the Isaacs family? Here we go. We got it on film right here.
It's recorded. I will tell you, whoever you ask says they're the best golfer. That's just the way it goes.
That is the way it goes.
I will say this. My grandfather, Y.Z. Isaacs, longtime pastor in North Carolina, he probably was the best putter in the family.
Okay.
Maybe still to this day is. He'll be 90 in just a few more weeks. Probably still the best putter in the family. My dad grew the game of golf in my and Jason's heart. Jason probably plays more golf than anybody, so we'll say he's better right now.
But just because he's got more reps. He's got more,
we've got a next generation of golfers too. My boys play. Jason's kids, they play. And so golf's one of those things that allows us to come together. But the Challenge Cup is the event you came. We have 8 or 10 different states of 8 or 10 different golfers that come every year, and it's a really great event. But it's just another one of those ways that we get connected and we stay connected to other people. A lot of Lee alums a part of that event over the years. And so I'm thankful for that.
I love it. I'll get you out of here on this question. Jeremey, you are a member of our board of directors. A couple years ago, Dr. Kahn gave you that call and brought you on to be in that leadership role.
Right.
We've had a presidential transition, of course, with Dr. Phil Cook coming on and leading us kind of in this new era, next generation of what Lee University looks like. So just from your perspective, and I think you bring such a unique perspective as a student, as a parent of a current Lee student, as a member of the board of directors, as a pastor in the Church of God. You check a lot of different boxes when it comes to our constituents and people that value Lee and want to see Lee do well. So what excites you about the future of Lee and where we're going?
Yeah, I think when I think about Lee, if it's possible to hold a couple of tensions together, I'm incredibly thankful for where we've come from.
Yeah.
I don't think that you have to rush into the future by getting rid of your past. So I love the heritage and the history of Lee. I referenced it a minute ago with some of the Lee Online things, but like so many of my friends and relationships and things like that were forged and formed in that season of time when I was on campus, and even since then. When I see that somebody's a Lee alum, and I immediately, there's a connection. Yeah. Several years ago, I was looking for some pastoral coaching, and I picked the coach out of a group of people because they went to Lee. Like there was just a natural connection. So I love our history, but I also love our present. I love not just the last few months, but even the last few years where we've weathered some really difficult seasons and times. We weren't the only one. There were other institutions, other people within our culture, other organizations. But I'm thankful that we were able to hold to who we were and really begin to move towards where we're going. And then I think the thing that excites me most is where we're headed. The thing that excites me is Dr. Cook's passion for the future, the excitement, the spiritual energy, the spiritual hunger. When I'm on campus, it's almost an intangible kind of, you feel it.
You feel it.
And I don't know how you measure it necessarily. There's not always a quantifiable dashboard for some of those things. But, man, I'm telling you, there is a tangible energy on this campus. Some of the new programs, some of the new things that are planned for our future. But when you talk to students, they have the same experience that we had when we were here.
Yeah.
And that excites me to know, hey, we're moving towards our future, but we haven't lost who we were.
Right.
And I love that, and I'm thankful for that, and I'll fight for that. I've spent time in our board of directors trying to help an incredible group of people just make sure that we're moving towards the future that God has for this place.
Right.
And to move in that direction, we don't have to give up who we've been. We don't have to give up who we are now. But man, we can honor God and honor these students, both present and future, because this is a place that God has ordained to really shape and form so many people for generations.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much. We're so glad to call you a friend. We're so glad to call you a Forever Aflame, an alum. We're so glad that we've gotten that Cooper's on campus and that things are going so well in your family and in your church and in your leadership on our board of directors. So thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to sit on the couch at the Forever Aflame podcast and talk with us. We
Thanks
appreciate
so much.
it. That was Jeremy Isaacs. Make sure to tune in next week. We'll have another great conversation with an alum who is making a difference in their community and for the kingdom of God. We'll see you then. Take care.